Hi everybody, God bless you my friends. This video is a prophetic teaching video about the 10 kings of Revelation chapter 17, and also about the 10 toes in regard to the vision and dream that was given to Nebuchadnezzar, interpreted by the prophet Daniel. And I'm going to begin in the book of Daniel chapter 2, and then after that I'll go into Revelation chapter 17, and then I'm going to open up after that the revelation of the 7 kings in regard to the 7 mountains on which the horse sits, and the Antichrist who is of the 8th, and really explain those bloodlines and open up this message. God bless you, enjoy the video. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 1, and in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherein his spirit was troubled, and his sleep broke from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spoke the Chaldeans to the king in Sirach, O king, live for ever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. And the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you will be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you will show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honour. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. And they answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and then we will show you the interpretation of it. And the king answered and said, I know for certainty that you would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. So King Nebuchadnezzar was demanding that they reveal the dream unto him, and of course they couldn't do that. But they then called for the prophet Daniel. And in verse 16, then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would then show the king the interpretation. Verse 17, Daniel chapter 2 verse 17. Then Daniel went to his house, and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning the secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. And then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. And Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God, for ever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removeth kings, and he setteth up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things, and he knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, that you give me wisdom and might, and have made known unto me now what we desired of you. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Verse 26, and the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, Are you able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen? and the interpretation thereof. And Daniel answered in the presence of the king, and said, The secret which the king has commanded, cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers, can they not show unto the king? But there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets, and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for you, O king, your thoughts came into your mind upon your bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets makes known to you what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have, more than any other man, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that you might know the thoughts of your heart. You, O king, saw and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. You saw till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell you the interpretation thereof before the king. Verse 37, the interpretation. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven has he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold, O king. And after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things. And as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face, and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odours unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is, that your God is a God of gods, and Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing that you could reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he sent Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Before I teach on this chapter and go into this message, let me talk about Joseph and Daniel. We know that Joseph had the ability and the gift and the anointing from God to interpret dreams, and of course by his interpretation he was given the position as the governor of the land of Egypt. And here we see Daniel the prophet. Not only did he bring an interpretation, but he told the king his dream without even being told the dream. It was God who revealed it to him in a vision. And here we have the prophet Daniel, who was made ruler over the whole province of Babylon. So there you have the prophet Daniel positioned to rule over the whole of Babylon, and Joseph positioned to rule over the whole of Egypt. Isn't that amazing? And that came about by that ability from God to interpret dreams and receive visions and interpret dreams, which I find just amazing when you read into the work that God did through Joseph and Daniel in this regard. Now there is a verse here that I want to open up, and that is verse 43. Daniel chapter 2 verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Mingle themselves really speaks of a bloodline, you know, that they will mingle themselves with the seed of men. And this is what I believe in my spirit, this is what I believe in my heart, that the 10 kings really come from the Roman nobility bloodlines, really, that ruled over the Roman Empire. And when you look into the papacy, you have what's called papal bloodlines. You have the Orsini, you have the Breakspear, but you have the Borgias, and obviously, you know, from that Roman territory, you have, you know, the Medici. You have so many bloodlines, really, Roman nobility bloodlines, and also papal bloodlines, like the Farnese, like the Borgias, and so you have the legs of iron. That's really what I'm bringing forth. You have the Roman Empire, which, if you go to verse 40, it says, the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as it breaks in pieces, as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things. And as iron that breaks all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And I do believe that there are bloodlines that have continued, even though the Roman Empire really came to an end. You have the papal Roman Empire, and that is in regard to the whore of Revelation, Mystery Babylon the Great, dressed in purple and scarlet. So, you know, the papacy is built upon the ghost of the Roman Empire, is built upon the foundation of the Roman Empire. And of course, you know, the Vatican today is Caesar's palace, but it is built upon the foundation of the Roman Empire. So that really is also a revelation of the 10 kings. But I'm going to now turn to Revelation 17, because we have the destruction of the great whore by the 10 kings. The destruction of the great whore by the 10 kings. And I'm going to go right to that verse, and then I'll open up the rest of the chapter. But that is an important verse to go into, because the 10 kings do destroy the great whore. Verse 12, Revelation chapter 17, verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Now the beast, of course, he comes from the 7 kings, and he is of the 8th. I'll go into that later on. I'll read verse 12 and continue down again. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and they shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the Lord of lords, and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate, and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Okay, I'll just pause for a little bit and open up verse 7. I'll begin there. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carries her, that has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And of course, Rome was known as the city on 7 hills, not just the papacy, but Rome itself was known as the city on 7 hills. And of course, you can go into the 7 heads and the 7 mountains, but you have 7 mountains on which the horse sits. That's the ancient Roman Empire, the ancient territory of the Roman Empire. The 7 heads, the 7 mountains. Verse 10, and there are 7 kings, so you have 7 kings that ruled over those territories. 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is. And as I was reading that 1 is, it stood right out. Sometimes when you read something in Scripture, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God will highlight a particular verse, and there'll be a part of it that will stand out to you. It will just be speaking. It will just stand right out, and that's what happened. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is. And as I read that 1 is, I realised that really there is one bloodline from the ancient territory. Really, there is one bloodline which is really located where the 7 mountains of Rome are. And of course, one in particular, you have, okay, let me explain it this way. If you go to Washington DC, I know many of you, my friends, will have heard me say these things, but you have Capitoline Hill, and of course it looks identical to the Papacy. You have the dome and you have the obelisk directly in front of that. If you go to St. Peter's Basilica, you have the dome and you have the Egyptian obelisk directly in front of that. So that's just an example of what I'm teaching here. So there are 7 kings, and really 7 mountains. But the 7 kings, 5 are fallen and 1 is. So you have 1 bloodline that comes from the 7 mountains. And I'll continue. There are 7 kings and 5 are fallen and 1 is. And just highlight 1 is. Just draw a line under that and highlight that 1 is. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen and 1 is. And the other is not yet come. So that other would be the 7th. He is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. So the scarlet coloured beast, which is described in verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. That's in verse 3. And then in verse 7, the angel of God reveals the mystery of the beast, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. I believe that the Antichrist comes from a bloodline that comes from ancient Rome, and obviously was controlling the papacy. And also you have 10 horns, that is 10 kings, but I do believe they also come from the same bloodline. And that's why they give their kingdoms unto the beast. They have no kingdom as yet. That's very, very clear. Revelation 17 verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings one hour with the beast. Why do they all come from the same bloodline? Well, this is what I believe. A few days ago, I was reading the book of Genesis, and the Lord told me to read the book of Genesis, so I just began reading through the beginning of Genesis. And obviously, you know, you do realise when you read the Gospel of Matthew chapter 1, and you realise that there is a bloodline that God works through from the time of Adam, and of course then you have Enoch, and you have Noah, and you know, it goes all the way to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and it goes to Joseph, and it goes right the way through the creation of the tribes of Israel from Jacob. And of course Jacob prophesied over his sons, their destiny in the latter days. And then of course you have the words of the prophets and so on, but it goes all the way unto Joseph. And then you have the angel of the Lord that appears unto Mary, you know, and then you have the angel of the Lord that appears in a dream to Joseph. But what I'm teaching here is that God is working through one bloodline. He's working through one bloodline, and I believe that it's just a revelation I've received recently. It's just a revelation I've received that there is one bloodline that Satan is working through to bring forth the man of sin, the son of perdition. And of course, you know, Lucifer counterfeits God. He counterfeits the work of God. He counterfeits the way that God works. He counterfeits the way that God brings forth, you know, his saviour, his deliverer. And of course Lucifer is going to bring forth the man of sin. We read that in Revelation chapter 6 about how he comes on a white horse, and how he comes to bring peace, but through that peace and through those covenants he deceives people, and he overthrows nations, and he goes forth conquering and to conquer. But you have God working through that bloodline from the time of Adam unto Christ. And I do believe that what you have here is you have Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Of course, we know that that woman, that great whore, is of course, Vatican City, the Papacy, but it's not just the Vatican. It's a Babylonian brotherhood that encompasses and covers the entire earth, and it's a Luciferian brotherhood also. It's a Luciferian order. But you have, this is what I believe. I believe you have a bloodline that is Luciferian, but it's a Roman bloodline. And that's really what the seven kings are. Five are fallen, one is. And the one is, it brings forth the seventh, and then it brings forth the eighth. The eighth obviously being the Scarlet Beast, the man of sin. And sometimes over the years I've received different revelation. I think really about 10 years ago my focus was on the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And then it was the Scarlet Beast, and then of course it was the 10 kings, and recently the Spirit of God has opened up the 7 heads, the 7 kings that come from the 7 mountains of Rome, being the ancient Roman Empire. And also a few days ago, studying the book of Genesis, I realised that, you know, the reason why God chose Abraham, his servant, yes, he was chosen by God, and it was the sovereign will of God, but it was also because he came from the bloodline of Enoch, and he came from the bloodline of Adam. Really, you know, it goes right the way back to Adam. And you have, you know, what I would call, you know, a holy bloodline, but you also have an, you know, those that were the sons of Cain. You know, you have an unholy bloodline, and that is also what is happening. It's a very deep thing to study, and it's something that God's revealed, that God works through that bloodline that he is ordained to work through. But I do also believe that Satan counterfeits this, and he has the 7 kings, of course. I'll read Revelation 17 verse 10 again, just so you can understand this more. And there are 7 kings, and 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. And is of the 7th, and goes into perdition. And then you have the 10 horns. Now people could say, well, the 10 horns, the 10 kings, they're just going to be 10 governors, you know, 10 rulers. Well, we have a one world government today. We have a one world government, of course. And the headquarters of that government is Rome. It's Rome. People call it the Holy Roman Empire. It will rise. They call it the Revived Roman Empire. But it's not the EU, you know. If you go to Strasbourg, and I know that everyone watching this video will know this already, but if you go to Strasbourg, you see the European Parliament designed and created and modelled after the painting by Bruegel. And the painting by Bruegel, you have Nimrod's unfinished tower, his one world government, his desire to control, really, and dominate. And of course he rebelled against God. He rebelled against God. He wanted to bring all the people together so that they become one, and then he would rule over them. And of course that is revealing the Antichrist himself in the future, that will rule over his one world government, and he will be in rebellion against God. He will be in defiance against God, and of course he will oppress and rule over the people. From, well, that tower reaching to heaven, of course the Lord came down and he scattered them and he confounded the language. And of course the Lord will do the same thing again with the Antichrist, with the one world government. He will just scatter and destroy it again. But you can see there in the architecture and design of the European Parliament, you can see clearly that they are a Babylonian brotherhood, Luciferian Babylonian brotherhood. Or why would they even create that parliament exactly according to the painted by Bruegel. They're revealing to us who they are, for those that have eyes to see. And I mean, I realised that years ago. But over the years, the Lord would open up certain parts of this chapter. You know, God doesn't reveal everything all at once. He doesn't reveal everything all at once. Sometimes He'll open up a part of it. The Bible says we know in part and we prophesy in part. So God will give you a part of that revelation, then a few years later He'll give you another part of that, and He'll open up another part of it until you can see the picture. But of course, you have... I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll read the entire chapter, just to put everything into context. Revelation chapter 17 verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, and there came one... Okay, I'll slow down. I'll just get a drink of tea, and I'll start again. I'll slow down. Okay, my friends. Revelation chapter 17 verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come here, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations, and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the whore, the woman, sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is of the 8th, and is of the 7, and goes into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, The waters which you saw, where the whore sits, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate, and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So there is a one world government, and it is ruled over and will be ruled over by 10 kings, 10 rulers, 10 kings. And they give their kingdom unto the Antichrist, unto the beast. But the beast himself comes from a bloodline of kings. And of course one is. So there's one bloodline that the man of sin, the son of perdition, the beast, the Antichrist, Scarlet Coloured Beast, he comes from a bloodline that came from the 7 original mountains of Rome. It's fascinating, it's interesting, and things just keep opening up. Keep opening up, really. There's so much revelation in this chapter. Now, I'll talk about the destruction of the great whore. Now, people ask the question, how could the Antichrist be a Pope of Rome? How could he be a black Pope? How could he be a white Pope when the papacy is destroyed? Well, this bloodline, call it the Order, call it the Babylonian Brotherhood, many titles, but there is a bloodline and there is an order and there is a brotherhood that is behind, controlling the papacy, really. So the Antichrist will come from the bloodline. So if you destroy Catholicism, the papacy, the Vatican, if you destroy that whole system, as in the great whore of Revelation 17, then that bloodline will still be in control. They will still be in control. It will still bring forth the 8th king, the Scarlet Beast, who will go into perdition. So, but of course, every Pope of Rome has been an Antichrist because they are against Christ. They're in the place of. That's another definition of the word Antichrist, is in the place of. And of course, as head of the church, they are in the place of Christ, ruling over the church, as in, universal Catholicism, universal. But we have a one world religion also, and you would always see the Pope of Rome that would have preeminence, dressed in white, and but what is clear is that the Scarlet Coloured Beast, the Antichrist, will be a king. He will be a king. He will come from a bloodline that will come from the 7 mountains of Rome, and that consists of the 10 kings. And you have one bloodline that will bring forth the Antichrist, the 8th king, and he with the 10 kings, they will destroy that papal system. But it is important, and I've said this many years ago, it's important to understand that the Scarlet Coloured Beast, he comes from the papal structure. He comes from that papal structure. So, but they will destroy that. But they've come to power through that. Okay, I'm going to end the video. It's not a long video, but it's just meditations that I've had, revelations, things I've been reflecting upon, things I've been meditating upon that I'm sharing with you. And if you have any comments, you're welcome to leave a comment and I'll respond and I'll take it from there. But you have bloodlines really that controlled the Roman Empire. If you go into the Roman Senate, really, the Roman Senate, the original Roman Senate, of course America has a Senate because it's the revived Roman Empire, isn't it, really? Capitoline Hill, you have the Roman Senate. But if you go into the actual Senate of Rome itself, the Senate of Rome, the senators, they all came from certain Roman nobility bloodlines. And it's exactly the same with the papacy. You had the Farnese, you had cardinals that were Farnese, you had popes that were Borgias, who were obviously high Jesuits, and you had superior father Jesuit generals who were generals of the army of Loyola, the militia, and they were high Jesuits, but they're also Borgias. And you also have the House of Farnese that work with the Jesuit order, and you can see the Farnese arms, of the House of Farnese, in the Church of the Jesuit, and it's very clear. So there are Roman bloodlines that control the Roman Empire, and there are, of course, papal Roman bloodlines that controlled the papacy hundreds of years ago. So conclusion to the video. You know, I haven't really done a lot of research on the 7 kings, 5 fallen, 1 that is, or the 8th being the Antichrist. I mainly focused years ago on the Great Whore and the Scarlet Beast, and then the 10 kings, but it's made me realise something. It's made me realise something, that the Antichrist, the Scarlet Beast, he's the 8th king, and he comes from the 7 kings, but he comes from the area of Rome itself. The bloodline that he comes from what's called the 7 mountains of Rome, and 7 heads. You know, the dragon, remember this also in Revelation, the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. So Lucifer, Satan, the devil, he arises and brings war against the saints. He persecutes the church of God. He goes forth to attack Israel, but he does that through this Roman Empire that the Antichrist rules over. But the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. So it's Lucifer, Satan, the devil, walking through this Roman Empire, walking through, of course he was walking through the Great Whore to deceive the people of the earth, to keep them blind. The Bible says the God of this world, which is Satan, the God of this world blinds the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ should shine unto them. So in history, Satan, Lucifer the devil, deceived the inhabitants of the world, because the kings of the earth were under the control of the papacy and the popes of Rome and the cardinals and the bishops and the priests. And so because they were under that control, they were deceived. They did not have the gospel. They did not know the gospel of Jesus Christ. What they had was mystery Babylonian papal doctrines, obviously later on Jesuitized, you know, into the worship of Mary, Isis, Queen of Heaven, Semiramis, you know, holding Horus, you know, the sun god. And so, but people didn't understand that. They didn't understand that. They had no revelation. But the dragon has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, of course, really the 7 heads are the 7 mountains of Rome. Really. So you have the 7 mountains of Rome, and you have, you know, the 7 kings that come from that region, from that territory, and that's what Satan was working through in history. He was working through the Great Whore, and he was working through you know, these bloodlines that controlled the Roman Empire, that also controlled the papacy. And that's why the dragon, the red dragon, the great red dragon, has 7 heads and 10 horns. And ultimately in the future, you know, you'll have 10 kings that will govern the nations. They will rule over the nations, and they will give their world government unto the Antichrist. Why? Because he comes from that bloodline. He comes from that bloodline. And God works the same way. He works the same way. What I mean by that is that God works through a bloodline, and that bloodline began with Adam, and it went right the way through Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and God then delivered the people of Israel, the sons of Jacob. After 400 years he brought them out of Egypt with plagues and signs and wonders and miracles. And of course we have the plan of God, but it all came through a bloodline, and I believe that Lucifer will do the same thing. He will work through a specific bloodline to bring forth the man of sin. I'll end the video there. God bless you, my friends. There's a lot of things for you to study there, a lot of things for you to look into, and God bless you. I'll bring more videos. God bless you. Thank you for watching the video. God bless.